Hello, everybody, and welcome to this 13th episode of the Design System Social Club. Today, I'm very excited to talk about managing a design system and basically talking about the role of manager for design systems. And with me today, I have Taryn. Hey, Taryn. Taryn is the design system manager at Plaid and not Plaid. I just learned that, so thanks very much. She has experience leading both, 0 to 1 and complex multi-branded design system. Super happy to have you, Taryn, today. Hi.
Likewise.
And then we have Amber. Hey, Amber.
Hello.
Hi. Amber is the product design manager for the UI system team and leads also the design engineering practice at Sprouts. She lives in Florida with 4 cats, 2 guinea pigs, and 1 human, which I think makes it like even more relevant to talk about managing a design system. You probably have like your own design system for your house or something like that.
It would help.
And then with us, we also have Donnie. Hey, Donnie. How's it going?
It's good. Everything's good.
Donnie is a regular here, but he's the design system architect at GoDaddy, and he's also the author of Gridless.design that I definitely encourage everybody to check out. And finally, because we're 5 today, we also have Kelly. Hey, Kelly.
Howdy.
Hi. Kelly worked on design systems at the Financial Times, Salesforce, Shopify, and he's also the founder and the co-chair of the W3C Design Tokens Community Group. Woo! I did it.
Good to be on the show. You did it.
Yeah, I actually figured out how to do that correctly. Cool. So yeah, today we're going to basically talking about three managers here. I'm managing the design system at Fair. And before that, I basically also managed the design system at ThoughtSpot. And I was also the UX Eng manager for IDS, which stands for Intuit Design System. So that's kind of like my 3rd design system that I lead in one capacity or another. And apart from that, I'm just excited to talk about the different aspect of managing a design system. So we're going to start simple, and I'm going to ask, really, Taryn and Amber, how did you end up being a manager of a design system? What's your backstory? Who wants to talk?
I can go first. Yeah. So I actually found myself working on design systems at Indeed a few years back, and really kind of stepped up into more of a team lead role as we were kind of just transitioning between different organizations and growing a new team. And I really fell in love with people leadership then. But I think there was a little bit of doubt, right? Am I ready to be a manager? Is this the right time? And so, I worked at IBM and I worked at Shopify. And then I kind of reached this point where I realized I wanted to be in design systems, and I also wanted to be that people leader. And actually, it wasn't until I was in the hiring manager interview with Sprout Social that the hiring manager encouraged me to apply for the manager position. Just kind of interview. Worst case scenario, you qualify for the IC role, but what do you have to lose, right? So I think it was just awesome having that push of confidence even in the hiring manager interview. I don't know if you're ever ready to be a manager, but that was kind of my path to get there. And I've enjoyed it so far. It was a great decision.
Cool. And yes, it's a little bit like having kids, actually. It's like, are you ever ready to do it? But, you just if you feel like you want to, I would say go ahead. But yeah. And then Taryn, what's your backstory?
Yeah, wow, I can answer this in so many different ways too. I think I knew I wanted to work towards the management track when I had my first good manager and saw like how much opportunity that unlocks in the team and yourself and like your personal growth. But in terms of design systems, I'll anchor on that. So I started my career in an agency, and that's when I started to get interested in design systems, but had very little room to be able to practice at an agency. And so I made the decision to leave the agency and go to a startup. And that's where I was really able to start working with design systems. I was the sole designer there and pitched a system to the VP of product and CEO. And that was a really like, it was a leap of faith and very confidence inspiring in just building my focus in systems because it was successful and was able to live on without me. But then I went to Intuit, so that's where I worked with Christoph on the multi-branded complex design system. And that was another inflection point for me to see something so simple from the get-go at the startup and then see something so complex that had been living for a long time. And I started to understand like the importance of scale with a design system. So eventually moved full time over to work on the Intuit design system and the consumer design system before moving to Plaid. And that's where I was kind of able to build a niche in design system with that breadth of experience.
Cool. Great. Maybe I can answer to my own question also, but I think for me, so first of all, I think that the first thing that I did was actually back when I was still working in France, but at one point of my career, I was a webmaster. And it basically meant that, you were doing everything from design to, coding, taking pictures, community management. I was kind of like doing it all. And at one point, I had to hire more people because I didn't have like the bandwidth to do it all. And so that's how I started to become a manager. And then I became like head of the web division, where I was actually managing, front-end developers and designers and content writers, I guess, how you would translate that. So that was, my first experience as a manager. And then I guess the first time I became truly a design system manager was at ThoughtSpot, where I was a UX Eng manager, or I started as a UX engineer, but it was a very small team. And from the start, I was actually in charge to build a design system. So same thing, I started as an IC. And then at one point, I had like people to work with me, and I became a UX Eng manager. And at the same time, I was still in charge of the design system. Hence, I was never like, my title was never design system manager at this point, but I was basically there to manage the design system. And then after that Intuit, and then at Intuit, I was also a UX Eng manager. So I was not technically the design system manager. There was the design system director that I was reporting to, but I was more dealing with the technical side of the design team. And then after that, I moved to Fair, where I'm again a design system manager. And for me, actually, I think it has to do with the fact that, I consider myself a hybrid. I have like half of my experience as a designer, half as a developer. And I think that might be, like a strength for me to actually understand both sides and be able to actually talk with everybody and manage everybody. But that might be actually the next topic that we should talk about. Like, in your mind, and I encourage also Kelly and Donnie to talk about that, is that what do you think makes a good design system manager? What's specific about managing a design system? So yeah, who has an idea? Who wants to go first? Go, Donnie.
I would love to go first because that's something that I've struggled with coming up in my role as normally being a UX engineer. I've reported underneath the design org, and I've reported underneath the engineering org. And I've in both ways felt that my manager didn't understand what to do with me, or didn't understand, like, I would do this, like reporting underneath design. I did do design work, but most of my work was in code. So the design manager didn't know what that value was. I had difficulty kind of like translating that. And then, on the flip side, reporting underneath engineering and working much closer with design than practically any other of the engineers. You had that throw over the fence mentality for most of them. But working so closely with them and really, trying to craft the right experiences with them, there's a lot of effort that goes into that part of the experience where it's not just the code, it's really the collaboration. So I always felt it really difficult to excel in a UX engineering role because they kind of typically don't know what to do with you. They either put you in designer or engineering. And the fact that there's UX engineering managers or even design system managers out there now has been helpful, but it's certainly not everywhere. Like where I am at GoDaddy, I report inside of the engineering org, and it's very often that I feel like I don't belong because there's a lot of talk about, IT security and deployments and, a lot of AWS stuff that's just kind of out my wheelhouse. But I already also know that, the UX engineering track where I am right now is kind of like, isn't completely filled out or fleshed out. So you kind of don't want to move over to a UX engineering track because they don't know what to do with you still. So I'm curious to know, like, how you would help managers that are managing people that are UX engineers to, I guess, make them feel like they're on the right path. I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah, that's a big topic for sure. And actually, we have a comment also. Everywhere I've worked, there's not a career ladder for design engineers. Yep. Well, surprise, surprise. I joined FAIR like a little bit less than 6 months ago, and one of the first things that I want to do in my team when I joined, there were 3 front-end engineer and 3 designers, and I said I wanted to hire UX engineers, but it's a new practice at FAIR. So I need to basically like define the role, create the ladder, like we're starting from scratch. And it's not always easy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Should we continue on that vein, or should we go back to what do we think is like specific to a design? I feel like, yes, handling UX engineer is probably a big one for design system manager, but maybe we can come back to that a little bit later. But what else needs to be in your mind?
What were you about to say?
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna chime in. It's hard with video calls, like reading the lips and things, but no, yeah, I actually feel like the two are kind of related because I think that there's this natural tendency for a lot of like design and engineer hybrids to find themselves in design systems because it literally is like codifying and trying to, it's a problem of trying to like represent that design intention in like a very codified way that's easy for consumption and that can like make engineers like build experiences more efficiently and like focus on the things that like are important to them. And not to say that design isn't, right? But we've actually similar to Christoph, we actually have defined a design engineer practice at Sprout Social pretty recently, about 6 months ago. We have 2 design engineers. And, I think one of the things that makes a good design systems manager is recognizing that intersection of art and technology and allowing like design systems to be that hub there. So we have like design engineers on our team, but we also have web engineers on our team. And there's always been, I think, a little bit of ambiguity, especially at our size. Like we're not at the scale where we're really starting to see like the difference between design engineers and web engineers. So I think like part of what makes like, I think a good design manager is like acknowledging that design systems is a place that does kind of attract those hybrid minded folks, even if they report into design or whether they report into engineering, and being able to provide the flexibility and growth for them to explore that and kind of like approach design at every stage of the process, right? It's not just like we do have design engineers who are really focused on like high quality visual design, but we also have like web engineers who are really passionate about designing the developer experience. So yeah, I think that's something that like recognizing that it's like a hybrid place and like looking for talent that might thrive in that, I think is like something to definitely keep in mind as a design systems manager.
For sure. Taryn, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I I always joke, like, I don't know who let me manage design systems because I'm not a technical person. I'm probably one of the least technical people that exist in design systems, but I think that's also like what represents a big growth opportunity for like the technicality of design systems is how do we lean towards craft and also advocate for the user and make all of the technical value dead simple for people to understand and get excited about. And so that's something that I try to encourage my team to do too, is like bringing them back to what is the user story, what is the user journey of this technical feature, and let's get folks excited about that. But also lean on my team a lot too to teach me and grow in my technical understanding. And so I would encourage like a craft oriented person if they are interested in design systems, like don't be afraid to pursue it, but make sure that you are taking those learning opportunities. And I often find things in the community that I don't 100% understand and love to bring those back to my team just to like explain and learn and see how we can grow the system, but keep being inspired.
Yep, good call. Yeah, I think again, I feel like to answer my own question, but I think there's a for me like something very specific of a design system manager, and I wonder if there's another case like that. But for me, it's the hyper cross functionality of the role, because we like obviously it's just the product team, but at the same time, I feel like I need personally as a manager to actually be in touch with everybody, engineers, like engineers, UX engineers, designers, PMs. It's like I sometimes I feel like we need some kind of, and I actually did that at Intuit, but I created I asked my program manager to create a CRM to just keep track of everybody, because like there's potentially so many people that you need to, depending on the scale of your company, of course, but just like we really need to talk with everybody and be actually partnering with everybody. So that's sometimes I feel like like you're this kind of, I don't want to say salesperson, but advocate definitely for the design system, and that needs to be always like something really specific for me of like design system manager. I was trying to find if it's just a blind spot that I have, because like I don't know, obviously I don't know every kind of manager, but for me like the big difference is that I'm guessing that when you're a design manager but more on the product side, you probably like know your team, and yes, you do have some partner, but I feel like I probably have like 5 to 10 times more partners than your regular product design manager. Let's just put it this way. So yeah, and yes, I feel like I agree with you, Taryn, that you don't necessarily need to be that technical to be a good design system manager. I don't think it can help sometimes. You're like, it's always for me like I go back to what I would call the mechanic syndrome, right? It's like if you don't know anything technical, then like when you give your car to the shop and the mechanic can just tell you whatever they want because you don't know anything. Maybe it costs 200, maybe it costs 2,000. You don't know. So sometimes it's actually good to have like good partnership relation that say, yeah, I know what we're talking about here, so please don't don't BS me. But apart from that, I think I think it's obviously managing people first, but yeah, the other thing is I think it might be also related to something like a close topic to that is that what is in your mind. First of all, what is the model of your design system team right now? And what is for you like the ideal state of the design system? Because I feel like behind that, it also depends on like, how do you function actually in your organization? Personally, we have a permanent team of people, but then, like our goal is to make a community-based product. The design system is a community-based product. So that's also why I have like so many partnership and collaboration going on, because like this is not the expectation for my team to build everything themselves. I don't think that's what we want in my work. But then the scale is obviously like a problem. But at the same time, it also means that the permanent team that I'm leading is actually also like basically creating the structure for that collaboration to happen. So this is how we are right now. And to just finish with that, my current situation is that I have 3 front-end engineers. I have 4 designers right now in the team. I'm hiring for 2 UX eng. I'm hiring for a program manager, which maybe we can talk about later. What, like tactically speaking, like is it a good headcount to have or not? We're gonna also hire a PM that is going to be a PM for internal tools and design systems. And I would love to have somebody that is more like a content strategist, something like that on the team, but I don't have the headcount right now. So that's me. Taryn, Amber, do you want to talk a little bit about your team and where you are?
Yeah, I can kick us off. So our team sits within the design function, and we are one of 3 of the horizontal teams. So there's brand, research and insights, and design systems. And the design systems team consists of myself. We have 2 designers, 2 engineers, and a design technologist. So we're a small but mighty team. We're still early stage design system. So we have like V1 out, and we're growing the system now. So our next focus will be on adoption. So for those reasons, I think we could really benefit from some operations support. Another engineer, we do have a pretty large backlog. And I think a product manager would be a game changer. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah, I can chime in for Sprout Social. So the team that we actually have just gone through a name change. So at Sprout, we follow the zone squad model, and Design Systems is a dedicated squad. But we actually have formed a zone called UI Systems that Design Systems is now a part of. So it really allows us to have the Design Systems squad focused on design at scale, and allows us to have like a home for like the kind of systems work that we was maybe distracting, right? So we've actually introduced a new squad called Shared Experiences. We're kind of already playing with the idea of like that concept, and then we saw the Gusto article that was published by Katie Balchin, and I apologize if I butchered her name, but they talked about the Shared Experiences team and how they were using that to kind of address those macro level systems usage. So yeah, so for our UI systems team, like we definitely are trying to grow that out. But I think just for our dedicated design system squad, we have 2 design engineers, 2 web engineers, and 1 product designer and 1 product manager. And really their focus is like maintaining our Seeds website, like our source of truth for our design system, as well as like the tools and assets within the system, within Seeds. And then really Shared Experiences will be this like separate squad from design systems that will like help support teams like implement the design system, as well as like address like areas that we could be implementing the design system that maybe aren't owned by a particular team. So yeah, our team makeup's a little bit different. So I wanted to make sure I clarified the scope. But yeah, I'd love to hear from Kaylee or Donnie as well.
Yeah, I can go. Well, I think the design systems team needs to evolve with the needs of the company and the growth of the company. So I don't think there's an ultimate level that you have to reach or perfect state. Yeah, I've seen design systems teams go through ebbs and flows and just adjusting to whatever was needed, to be honest, and shrinking and growing again, and sometimes sending folks out to other teams, to product teams, to kind of distribute the know-how and the systems thinking. They did a great advocacy work as well in that regard. I think, Christophe, you were talking about was essentially developer relations and design relations at a company like Figma or Versal or Heroku, Netlify, etc. You would have those kind of roles where you build a product. You also have to have people who build demos and who say to the world how awesome stuff is. And so as part of the design systems team, I think you probably want to have someone who does a bit of that, or multiple people who do that. But yeah, for me, the best makeup is to have enough designers and engineers. That's like kind of a table stakes. But then, do you have content strategy? Do you have a UX researcher? Do you have people who are kind of at the back of the front end enough that they can take care of all the tooling and the infrastructure of how to ship and distribute and evolve the design system and evolve with the engineering practices of the organization as well, so that if, let's say, the engineering org decides to move to a certain version of Node or a certain version of Webpack or a certain version, that you ensure that compatibility and you have people who can take care of that, which is not easy. So those kind of added pieces kind of grow the team quite a bit. But for me, this is how I've seen it work the best. And then another team makeup that I've seen in the past that was very different was no content, no design, only infrastructure, but a huge effort put into other people contributing. And when anybody started at the company, they had 2 weeks of forced labor in the design systems team, and it would grow the sense of ownership into every single employee who would join. And that was interesting because it was like purely infrastructure and then completely distributed ownership. Kind of like an NPM kind of open source model. And it worked great. And then there was kind of working groups and interest groups around certain parts of the design system so that people could meet regularly on certain matters. Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Danny, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll say the makeup of ours. At GoDaddy, we have a design part of the design system, which is called Design Foundations. They're all designers, a couple UX engineers, but all designers. And then the team that I'm on is called UX Platform, which we maintain from the engineering side, the UX core, the design system for GoDaddy. And actually, like Caleb said, much of the engineering side of my team is based around the back of the front end. So it is the distribution, delivery, the how we, kind of provide this stuff to our partners, who are doing the engineering work. So that's very much like the majority, I think, of what's going on in the team right now in terms of its makeup. There isn't a lot of component building other than really me. I'm doing most of the maintenance of the components. But what's happened with GoDaddy was that there was a lot of contributor work. So there's a lot of stuff that came in from other teams that they needed, this component, and they felt that it was good for the design system, and it was included, which was great as a contributor model. But then you get kind of a lot of stuff that's hard to maintain or even potentially questionable as if it should be in the system at all because it's only in one place, meaning that it's only featured in one application. So we have to be like careful about the amount of things that we are responsible for, because if you get responsible for too much, it's pretty overwhelming. And then, but that's basically it, and that's kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about that difficulty of what lane to go into, because with a team that's centralized like that, that's you have several engineers or several designers or even just a collection of UX engineers, it's very easy, I think, a little bit to see how they're all connected. But in GoDaddy, there's columns, right? It's engineering and design, and we have to like find time to meet to talk about what we're going to do, which makes it difficult. But if you have the passionate people that are in there that want to talk, it's very helpful. But it would be better if the org kind of recognized the need. But yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in my experience, and right now, like my team is actually, I report to the head of design. So obviously we're more like skewed towards the design org. And, it's like, it has pros and cons, obviously, but sometimes I wish there was like a place to put us that would be a little bit more transversal. And I feel like I definitely feel that there's inherently there is a difference how we're perceived as a design system team between designers and developers, and I feel like we're a little bit further out from engineering. But at the same time, I don't know, like, I mean, I'm not sure what is the ideal scenario. Who should we report to exactly, you know? But yeah, I don't know if anybody else has a take on that. Like, where is your your design system team is now, and do you feel like this is the right place to be?
Yeah, so one of the reasons we moved to UI systems and this whole zone approach was because traditionally, like many design systems, like Seeds had started as a grassroots design system within design with like also a passionate base of like web engineers as well. But because it kind of like grew out of this need of like addressing like a source of truth for both brand design and product design, it was under the design function. And really what we tried to do is like create this product zone so that we can no longer say like this is a design function, this is an engineering function. That's like we treat it as like a product, and we have like a squad dedicated to that product, and that's why we are able to build like the cross-functional team that we have. So like kind of like Kaylee was saying before with like all the different roles that we would normally staff to product teams, like content strategists or UX researchers, infrastructure, QA. Like I think that's what we're ideally trying to move towards, is that design systems is a product, and then investing in it as a product is like the best way to kind of approach it, because our users, like, yes, like our purpose is design at scale, but our users are like everyone at the company, right? Like it's also a source of truth for like someone who's trying to download icons for a Google Doc, or like, you know, put together like a pitch meeting, to engineers who are just trying to like to streamline their visual presentation. And I love the idea of onboarding, right? Like, I think that's something that like we've even talked about doing. So I think that's like, I've seen it under design functions. I've seen it under engineering functions, but I really think like your design system is a product. And like, that's like the approach we're taking of like having it under the product org, so that it really takes that like cross-disciplinary and cross-functional approach.
That's super interesting. So you report to who? Yourself, Amber?
Right. So I report into product design, so the design org, but we also have a senior engineering manager who just joined our team. He reports into engineering, and then we have a product manager who reports into product. So we literally are like the 3 zone leaders. And just like any other product team, we have that trifecta. And yeah, so like I know someone mentioned like program manager and product manager, but yeah, we found it to be kind of essential to have that, like, again, treating it like a product, and just being really mindful of those that were like, and communicating even to senior leadership, like, yes, we're operating like a product team, but how we measure our product and features is going to be different. And we're very grateful that we have someone like Caitlin, who is our product manager, on our team, who's willing to like tell product like teams, like in a product manager way, like, here's how we measure our success and KPIs. Here's like how we handle release manages. Here are the things we can do to make sure, like the product marketing side of it, like the product adoption side of it. And having a product manager has just been so great. So again, another reason I just like am passionate about design systems being that trifecta stools, because if we didn't have Caitlin, like, would we get product having buy-in to like design system changes or contribution back? I think like it's so important to have visibility as much as you can in those like orgs.
Cool. We do have a few questions, I feel like, about what we're just talking about. So first, Donna. Hi, Donna, first of all. Amber, do you find the distinction between the yes product and using helpful? Do people know who to go to for what? I'm guessing that this is like from previous what you were saying earlier.
Yeah. So, I mean, the UI systems zone is new. Like, we literally just announced it this week. And luckily we're still at the early stages of growth. So it's pretty much the same team that they've known to be design systems. So to answer that question, like, we don't know if people have made that distinction yet. And that's like, but that's something that we're really working on, like with our comms. Like, we just released, again, like, we have these 3 squads, here's what they're focused on, and we have design systems being one of those squads. So I don't think we've had any confusion yet, because it's the same team that's like been formed into this, and we're just like adding a layer of abstraction to like scale. But you know, we do make sure that we have like multiple ways for them to contribute, Slack, email, like on the Seeds website itself.
Cool.
So I hope that answered the question.
Yep. Thanks. And follow up. I'm curious to hear how others approach design system as more than a product. Do you take that approach, and why? I mean, I feel like I want to say that everybody thinks that a design system is really a product. And, what I said earlier is that for me, it's a community-based product, meaning that, we're TikTok. We're, it's like we're not supposed to create the content ourselves, but we're building the structure so that everybody can contribute to it. Or, YouTube, if you're not cool enough for TikTok. But after that, I honestly, like, I think what you're describing, Amber, makes a lot of sense. And I feel like it's almost like we're playing to be a product, but we didn't go as serious as you in the org, or like the organization, in our organization, to actually recognize it as a product. And so that's actually pretty inspiring. So I might have conversation later. I don't know. But yeah, cool. And then I don't know. Anybody else want to answer, Donna? Okay. And then we have a Henry who said, saw something interesting today, that the design system can just be a system. The system deliverables, though, can be products, service, and projects. Of course, the result is just treating a design system like a product, but thought the mental model was interesting. Thanks, Henry. I mean, for me, like, I don't know, like, this design system can just be a system is kind of like one of the problem, actually, that I'm like struggling with day in and day out, is that making people understand what is the design system in the first place. And I love Jenny's from Atlassian, a regular on this team, on this show, but talking about hyper object and how difficult it is to actually define what is a design system, especially for people that are not working all day, every day on those things. So, like, yeah, I feel like if I'm saying a design system is really a product, I feel like more people will understand what I'm talking about. And if I say that, it's a system, but then we have, deliverables can be product, services, and projects. So this is my take on it, Henry, but anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can chime in and just say that, like, I think that's like one of the challenges of any design systems team, is that, like, managing up in education, especially if it's like a grassroots effort of proving that, like, I think one of the traps you can fall into, even like with us becoming like a product zone, for example, we have to make sure that even though we are a product team, that our KPIs are measured differently, and that you're not going to see the ship as fast, because design systems, because of our exponential scale, needs to have like more rigorous testing, more rigorous quality checking. Like, something that y'all mentioned is like the community aspect, which I think is so important, because we want to really like make sure the community is feeling involved, not just from a feedback perspective, but just from awareness contribution perspective. So yeah, I think it's like, I like the idea of like, I think that's like helpful in terms of maybe how to pitch it, because I think even if you can get it as a product, you'll still have to do that managing up of like the deliverables will be services or projects or internal tools, like a Figma plugin. They're not necessarily like shipping features to a certain set of users. So just want to throw that out there.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe we should talk a little bit about, whether you call them metrics or KPIs or deliverables or stuff like that. Like, this is, I think, also definitely the role of the design system manager to define those. But it's true that it's, or at least like from my perspective, what is interesting is that you do need, whether you, again, OKRs, objectives, KPIs, metrics. I feel like at the beginning of a design system, you can just run out of promises, because everybody understands the value, kind of, you can just like basically pitch the idea and everybody gets it. But at one point, you need to start showing progress, especially to leadership. And that's probably the role of the manager to actually do that. But making it understand, like, I don't know about you, but it's true that most of the time when people are asking me like OKRs or metrics around the design system, it's kind of like, yeah, but it's not really like, it feels always like a little bit odd and out of place, because it's not really like the same as everybody else in terms of like yeah, we're launching a new product every 2 weeks or something like that. It's like, first of all, it's much slower. So when I have, like right now, I feel like I have basically like some kind of meeting with leadership every 2 weeks where everybody's showing progress, and I'm like, yeah, it's the same as last time, because like I don't have anything new to show you. I don't know what do you expect. So there might be like some education around that for sure. And I want to even say that one thing that I noticed personally as a manager is that if you change things too often, it's actually not great for your user experience, because they're like, yeah, I can't keep up with you guys. Like, you're always changing stuff. Like, today was this, tomorrow is that, and I'm sorry, but I don't work on this every day like you. So actually, like, it is, I feel, something that is required from the management of a design system. Say like, we go slow, we make sure that this is not breaking everybody's experience, and we're introducing things like slowly to not disrupt everybody all the time. But yeah, happy to hear what are your experience around like this, like either like the pace, but also like how do you talk with leadership about metrics or progress or deliverables of your design system.
I feel like this is where the product analogy becomes very useful again, of like, we are launching a product from 0 to 1, and so it takes time to develop that product. And I think it's important to level set with leadership, with the expectation of, hey, like, this is an internal product and our OKRs should be steady, at least like, a year at a time. Of course, we should reassess those every quarter and make sure they still hold true. But as the product progresses, as the design system progresses, your metrics will change, and that's natural. And the goal with the metrics isn't always to hit 100. So I think it's just important to set expectations so that when we do compare design systems metrics against like other product metrics that leadership has visibility, that it makes sense to them and that they're not questioning them. So I think it goes a long way to explain the why and exactly how you're calculating things.
Cool. Anybody else? Amber?
Sure. Yeah. I think another thing, just because this is a lot of stuff that's been going on with us recently, but I think one of the things that we did was, I think it's all about like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, one of the things that a manager does, like a design system manager, is a lot of it's relationship building, not with just individuals on the team, not even just with the people up, as we talked about, like other engineering managers, other design managers who like your design systems team is working with. But I think like what's been really helpful for us is like very early on, we met with some of our like, senior product, leadership, across design, technology, and product. And we really try to level set like, what do you see the biggest value of the system being? And like we cross-reference that with some survey responses. And so we found were like themes like efficiency, cohesion. And so that like those themes and like kind of like what leadership was looking for, and also like what was the perceived value that we were providing to like featured team members in the survey, it really kind of helped us craft like what are the things that we can kind of like always make sure we have metrics to like address, right? Like, so how are we increasing efficiency? Like, I think that's an easy win, especially if we can talk about the exponential effect like a component can have in saving like developer time. But then how can we also point to cohesion, right? So I think that was really helpful for us. And I think that's just kind of like a responsibility of a design systems manager is like learning what those expectations are and helping like the team define those KPIs so that, set it like level setting. It's just like managing both ways, which is always the tricky part. But I found that really helpful.
Cool. Okay, here's a let's go spicy take a little bit. What is the worst metrics for a design system in your mind?
Number of components.
Yes. And it's very frequent too. But yeah, I think that was mine too. But anybody else has an idea? I see all smiling, so I guess we're all on the same page. But have you ever seen another thing like that didn't make a lot of sense?
I'll comment on something, actually. It's tangentially related, maybe. I used to work in the security field for almost a decade, and something that was told to me was that people pay for security And when they pay for security, they don't actually see the benefit. Like, you don't actually get the benefit of paying for security. You only kind of, see the benefit of it when you don't have it. So like when you don't have security, you'll see like, bad things happen, just generally speaking. So then that's when you actually pay for security. So I kind of like related the same way in terms of design systems about the metrics. It's like, if everything's going well, that's good. Like, things are good. It's when things aren't going well in terms of, there isn't a cohesive experience, and this page looks different from this page. That's where it's clear that you need the design system. And that's where the spots that show the benefit of. But that's the problem. Once everything is good, everything's working well, I feel like it's hard to show that value past things like velocity, right? If you have like some very unique page and you're trying to build that out, it's going to take a lot longer potentially, making custom stuff versus attempting to use what the system has. And especially in cases where you identify that new stuff has to go in the system, it slows things down. So I think that's where the metric part comes in, is like, talking about number of components. Clearly we want to have that metric, but also even like the coverage of a particular page is even difficult to say, because it's still just saying everything is going well, everything's going smoothly. It's not hard as hell like it used to be trying to make a page. And I think that's going to be the challenge when people identify and said, why do we need to maintain a system? We already have all the components already. Why do we need a team to continue to have it? And I think that's the challenge of like showing the value, especially with a mature system.
Thanks. Yeah. I want also to jump on, like Donna was mentioning adoption numbers. In my experience, like in the 3 design systems that I worked on, 2 of the CEOs that I had were basically only interested about that. It's like, okay, how much of the design system is adopted in the product? Which I understand totally this perspective, from leadership, because you can have like the greatest design system under the sun, but if it's not used or adopted, then like, what's the point? I get that. And I feel like it's a very easy to ask, like a very easy question to ask, but very hard to actually answer. And I don't even think that 100% is really the ideal state that you want to be in. So there's like a lot of education I feel that needs to happen around that. But yeah, anybody has experience about adoption numbers and adoption metrics and how you actually make sense of that?
Well, I think when you have design tokens, all of a sudden adoption becomes a totally different topic than just components. You could have lots of forks of design systems components, or lots of snowflake components that are just one-offs in your product. If they're using under the hood design tokens, you still get that scalability of design language, and so it might be a good thing, despite not being using the components that are bundled with the design system. I don't know why that person, that CEO, was so attached to that kind of metric, but I guess there are some key components that you want reused everywhere, some others that are just fork them, detach instance kind of thing, because you need that variability. Variation. Variability is more like entropy and chaos, and you typically don't want that. That's kind of why you come up with the design system, because you came from a world where there was too much entropy. And then variation is where you introduce deliberately, in certain instances, some variation so that you have this so not everything looks exactly the same. Otherwise, it's just boring and bland, and good UX should not look exactly the same everywhere. Otherwise, nothing catches your eye. There's no differentiation between what's on the forefront and what should be in the background. And so, I think this is where tokens come in. But I'm just probably preaching to the choir here, and
Yeah. No, it is definitely an interesting take. I was also thinking that obviously I feel like the reality behind this is also like once you create your design system and you start to have, like content available to use, whether it's tokens or components or I don't know, something else, or like brand assets, I don't know. It's usually way easier for new stuff to actually adopt it moving forward, but it's always a struggle. And I think this is where the adoption number also comes from, is that, okay, who is dealing exactly to actually clean up tech debt and design debt in the past and go back to, like the long tail of like, yeah, this button is not the new one. And whether or not it was a part of the design system or not before, it's like, who is actually dealing with this? And this is, again, where I feel like personally, this is where you need to have like great partnership with the product teams and be able to say, okay, this is technical debt. Yeah, I know it's not as, shiny new object as, like releasing this new feature. But if we want our end-to-end experience to look like something, we need to pay, like our dues to this and actually carve out some time to replace this old stuff. But that's where I feel like adoption numbers make sense, because you're like, yeah, you need to keep an eye on this and not just look forward to like the next new shiny object or the new feature. Obviously, when you work in a startup and you want everything to be created yesterday, it's always like a race moving forward and never looking back. So yeah, anybody has, I don't know, strategies that worked in that domain? How do you actually get those things adopted in like the legacy code?
We're kind of going through something like that now because we're switching. We're going through reevaluating our colors and replacing them with semantic color tokens. And so I think it was kind of like this tricky, like trying to give PMs as much of a heads up as possible so that they were aware. Because we're essentially asking like folks to replace like every instance of color in the web app from a literal token or a hard coded value to a semantic token. And it's like, it definitely, we had to, again, like, how do you quantify the initiative that we're doing this under in business terms, right? So it's like, yes, you have to take on this technical debt to like do the tedious work of changing every instance of a color in the web app. But here's what we're gonna like unlock as a business perspective, right? So again, like what can we unlock with colors if we have semantic tokens? Like again, I'm not divulging too much, like I'm sure y'all can guess, some of the ways we're heading, but it's just like we had to really like start that conversation of like, here's the business impact that we're trying to achieve, or like for the end user experiences, and like get customer quotes. And then we're like, here's how we can do it together. And one of the things that I think like we've actually started exploring as well is, I think Donnie hit a good point earlier of like, there's this point of maintenance, right? And we hit this mode where we've delivered all the things, and maybe it's our focus turns more to like maintenance and service, right? And I think that is something like a design systems manager can also like maybe incorporate into their teams. Is like, what does that service model look like to helping teams like adopt the system, right? Not that and I saw Donna's comment, like not that all the responsibility should be on the design systems team, but like developing those partnerships and getting them as excited of like the why behind it as like we are. And I think that is on the design systems team to like tell the narrative of like, here's how if you adopt this feature, it could impact business. Not that it's like their responsibility to force people to adopt it, but telling that narrative, I think, is like part of the design system manager job.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we're back to what we said earlier about like what is specific is how cross-functional we need to be, and that means also business. And we need to talk that language to actually be able to have a relationship with everybody, and yes, making progress there. But yeah, I mean, and it's also like, I feel like, you need to get out of this idealistic view, where you're like, yeah, I'm working on the design system and it's awesome and everybody understands that, so it's just going to happen. Unfortunately, you have to be realistic about the business side of it and say, well, what can we do this quarter? Like how much can you actually, dedicate to that? Because we all understand that that would be great to do, but that to me, like, I would gladly welcome your opinion on this, but I don't think, like, we're not in a point, I feel, in this industry where people are not like doubting the benefit of having a design system. We're not there anymore. It's more about like, okay, so but how do we make that a priority, and how do you put that on, like your quarter objective or something like that, right? It's like, this is more, to me, like, this is more where we are now, because it's always like working for your own internal tools. I've never seen a company, unlucky me, I guess, where this is a priority. So yeah, anybody wants to comment on that?
I can chime in and say what I'm hearing from Ember. 2 words: dark mode. Like, this is the way to force the forcing function for teams to address their non-tokenized components, etc. And I don't know if you couldn't say it or something like that, but this is what I was hearing all along.
Just hypothetically speaking, dark mode would be something that one could do if they replaced every color instance in a web app to be semantic. But I don't want to say anything like too revealing. But yeah, right. I think like it's cool because that is like a direct, like the example of dark mode is like a direct way that you can like get PMs kind of passionate about the end business impact. And I think another reason that I'm personally excited we have a product manager is that she gets to do that job. Like, I think that's something that like small scale design systems team, there's usually like one design manager, or there's like maybe a design and an engineering manager. But I think that product hat is often like worn by a lot of design systems managers, as well as program manager, as well as like design system ops. Cause like, again, it comes into more of like this community thing. So yeah, I think that was another thing we unlocked by getting a product manager, was like, now we have someone whose job it is to like tell that story in a way that gets other product managers excited about.
Yeah. I think the other, apart from dark mode, it's probably also like when you start to talk about theming, where, like you get also traction, because this is, like after consistency and stuff like that, it's like, hey, wouldn't it be great to have like different themes for like different product, but under the hood, like it's exactly the same stuff. And this is also where I feel like you probably get the most traction and success, where suddenly people are like, interesting. Yeah, because we take a lot of time when we want to rebuild something just slightly different. So yeah, it's another possibility, I think.
We had something at Compass actually prior to dark mode being a really big thing. One of the biggest complaints that was happening was that when design would look to do a refresh of the brand or what have you, or even just try something out, it was really hard for people to do that because they would have to go in very specific places to turn specific colors different. And the front engineer at the time that was doing that, was talking with me about it, and instead of what we came up with at the time was something called intents, which is much more commonly known as semantic tokens. But the word intent was basically to describe, I intend to display a value here. I don't know what value it is yet, but I intend to display a value here. I intend for this to be the primary button background color. And being able to describe the UI and the components that way just made the ability for us to try new things and experiment on different, branding techniques. And again, way before we were thinking about dark mode, a lot easier, right? And it was like, I think everyone's mentioning here, the buy-in there to unlock that possibility, it made it a priority for everyone to go ahead and update the system and their products to support that, so that they can try their own things.
Yep. Cool. Thanks. That's another useful example, I think. Great. Noticing that we're almost at time, so maybe it's a good place for us all to stop. I want to thank again our newcomers, Taryn and Ember, to join. I think it was an awesome conversation today. I definitely hope that you'll be back again for another topic. Anybody else has, I don't know, some final words on the design system role? I mean, design system manager role. Personally, I think it's awesome. So I hope we're just, if people are passionate about design system, this is a great place to be. I feel for people passionate about that. So, and it's super interesting, and it's a great way also to grow, I think, in terms of your career or like leadership skills and stuff like that. So, Henry, thank you too. Anybody, any final words before we wrap up?
I can say that you don't have to be a manager to grow in leadership and all that. So if just to people out there who might be interested in management and growing in their leadership skills, you can be an IC and grow further, or you can become a manager and see if it works out for you, and then maybe it doesn't, and then you go back to being an IC, and that's totally fine. So just wanted to put it out there.
It's true that we didn't talk about
have a great impact without being a manager.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's one thing actually that maybe we'll talk about next time, is that I feel like every manager, especially at the beginning, you're like going back and forth between like, yeah, but I don't get to be an IC anymore. That sucks, because sometimes I just want to design something myself, or I want to code something myself, and I can't anymore. Or when you try to see what is your impact, and you're like, I don't do anything. I'm in meetings all day, and this sucks. And so sometimes there's definitely an imposter syndrome about that. I don't think we have time to do that, but thanks, Kelly, for pointing this out. Leadership doesn't mean management. So there's definitely different ways, but yeah, cool. Well, we're overtime now. So thanks again, everybody to show up today and have this really cool conversation. And last thing that I want to say is that next month is going to be off because I'm on vacation. And the next one I want to say is in August. We will have a very special guest. I'm not going to say who. Starts with a J. And it's going to be an Ask Me Anything kind of question. So I think it's going to be really fun to do. And I'm really excited and pumped about that. So
John Legend, yes.
Well, I thought it was going to be Jesus. I thought Jesus was going to show up.
Yep, exactly.
Whoa.
You got it. Anyway, well, we'll see in 2 months. So enjoy, everybody, in the meantime. And as usual, stay fresh. Cheese bags.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
Thanks
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks,
Bye.
you too. Bye.